pleasure. Only one welcome at the behest of my good dear friend Joe Friendly, who's my guest. Joe Friendly is a pioneer public access producer, and he's the creator of this program, a daily program aired on Manhattan Neighborhood Network and streamed around the world, as they used to say in terms of movies, stage, screen, and radio, on the internet, Joe Friendly. And Joe, so good to see you. And I was so blown away the other day by watching a tape that you had done, and it looks like it was on July 4th, and I think we're going to show a clip from it, but it was when there was a major, what seemed to me in terms of the relative newness of the subject and everything, a major march down, I guess, Fifth Avenue here in New York about all of the things around, what's his name, the Edward Snowden, and the support of him. Rev Billy was there and everything. And it was a major, it looked like a major march. It was a whole lot of people, a lot of noise, very effective. And the shooting of the video that you did was absolutely brilliant. It was so good. You had the framing done and everything like that. So congratulations on that. And with that, Sid, and promise to the audience that we're going to show a clip from that. But you want to say something? You want to say something?
I agree we should go to the clip. But before we go, I just want to make a couple of, I have videoed my share of marches. And more important, I think, was the one in Albany a couple of weeks ago, in which they did have a couple of thousand people plead with the governor, who was within hearing of the thing. His office was right there.
Right.
There's 1,000, 2,000 people.
And was the issue the same one about the security,
It was about fracking, about destroying.
Fracking, yeah.
I mean, if he says yes to fracking,
yeah,
that's the end of New York, and within several states, it ultimately means no good drinking water.
Well, okay, that's an issue that's been marinating for a while. It's building a large
But I mean, in terms of the powers of the people,
yeah,
what you got excited about was about 300 people.
Okay.
And at least what they did was they thought up the march destination as the place where the Declaration of Independence was signed.
Right, right.
So from Union Square, which has the worker tradition, to there, and it was down Broadway, not Fifth Avenue. The police were gentlemen. They were no problem at all. There was one shot in there where I had Homeland Security. Just there was a car, I caught that on the fender. But it was to the credit of Reverend Billy.
Rev Billy's something else.
He has a good sense of performance.
Yeah,
and it is a lot of effort. There was one shot I didn't include. I didn't even take it when we were walking by the march.
Yeah.
He was sitting on the side, and he had taken off his white jacket, and all he had on was the black gadget with open arms.
Yeah, right.
And I gave him a play. I didn't.
He didn't want to hurt the image.
But I've known him over the years, and just listening to his abilities to keep a crowd on their grabbing their attention for all it's worth. He does it so well.
I wonder if you were at our place when I met Mr. Talon or him. We were airing a program at the house on a U.S.matic tape with, I think, Timothy Leary, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, boy.
And he had just more or less come to town. He was from Los Angeles and everything, and he came, and I went with him on one of his little ventures like that with a camera, because at that time, that would have been 12, 15 years ago or something, but on the corner of 42nd Street and 7th Avenue, they had the Disney store. And I'm walking along next to it with a camera, and I got some on footage. And he walks in the store, and he's got Mickey Mouse, and he says, "Here is the devil." And he went through his whole routine. And it was really something. He pulled it off with great aplomb and everything. And he got, escorted out and all that kind of stuff. But were you at that gathering? He was at the house?
I do remember that store was a big deal. He preyed upon that store. They were like, if they see him coming,
here comes the Rev Billy. Yeah, he's great and everything. Yeah. But no,
I don't know if I was at your place for that.
But there's been all this hullabaloo that seems to be getting a lot of play, even in the corporate media and that sort of thing, about, like Bradley Manning has been there, and now you've got this other Edward Snowden, and that's what they were protesting about. And the security you know, the extraordinary dimensions of and National Security Agency and everything, getting all these, you know, files on everybody, and the lack of pride. It's a relatively new issue, and so you had a real demonstration in, you know,
we're going to get to that
quickly after it was introduced.
But,
yeah.
What I want to stress right there, I think the point we have to make.
Yeah.
We're talking about a police state.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the U.S. government has become a police state. If we weren't a police state, then we would know to cheer our whistleblowers. And as it stands now, that's the issue.
Yeah, right.
Now, Manning was a whistleblower and Snowden's the whistleblower. And as a people, we should honor the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, and say, wowee.
Yeah.
But we have a government that murders daily and pretends it's in the name of freedom.
Yeah.
That's all criminal activity. So our government is basically a criminal enterprise.
Amy had another fellow on today. This is just today as we tape with the 11th of July. Somebody named Brown, I forget the name, Bradley Brown or something. He's been in custody for another one of the whistleblowers that are showing the nature of the police state and the lack of privacy and all the kind of issues that are involved that's beginning to take on a life of its own.
And if you go on YouTube, there's more whistleblowers. Thomas Drake is a good one. He has a nice talk at the Washington National Press Corps. It's out there, but again, our point is
it's got real legs.
What we were saying before we turned on the camera was that the point you usually get to is that we have arrived at a situation where the government is basically taking us in the wrong place, that we have a wrongful government, a dysfunctional government, that the hope of the founding fathers that people could elect leaders who would reason together and think through what's the best thing. That isn't happening. And you went to a conference where they were exploring the upper limits of the human intellect. And that isn't happening in government. It's the opposite.
I think not. And one wishes that the governmental or the political and the governmental leadership class could have something on the order of an enlightened understanding of what's needed in a comprehensive context, and they don't. They seem to be only feathering the nests of the rich and powerful at the expense of the least advantaged people of the world, which is a bad template to be following, even though the Dow went up and everything.
Okay, here's the point to stop right there. My chance? Okay, you said comprehensive. I have been working for 40 years, old buddy.
I know that. You've been at it. He's a real pioneer.
But I was inspired 40 years ago to present to the public an alternative. And it's developing a language for the alternative. And I've videoed mostly leftist events. I'm welcome at the different leftist organizations when they have their speeches and stuff. And that's been the source of a lot of my programming, in addition to church basements, is Marxist groups, in particular the International Action Center.
And Ramsey Clark and Sarah Flounders and Brian Becker and those people. But God bless them all.
But I've heard their Marxist rhetoric, and I felt like it was due for modernization. That the American people need more than workers arise. That the phraseology I thought and still hold on to is public. That we have the government against the public. So we don't need the workers to arise. We need the 99% to rise against the 1%.
Right,
So you're comfortable with that too?
Absolutely, absolutely,
Now, I've tried being a worker here and there.
Oh, you've got a pretty
But mostly I ended up being a boss, that I ran a moving company as a kind of a anthropological trick to hang out in New York and still be part of the people. I thought of all the different things to do. I could work for a corporation, or I could look in people's drawers.
No, wait a minute. Let's back up a little bit. You're out of Chicago originally, and you've been to Caltech. You've been you've studied the law. You're a highly educated person, and you've got tremendous capability, and you are a real pioneer of public access television a treasure here, and you've got Truth for a Change that runs every day at 9:30 or 9 o'clock, you know, to 10, and that's part of your bio and everything, and I think people ought to be aware that you know a lot about electrical engineering and a whole lot of things, and you've got a hell of an educational background.
All right, buddy, if you want to go in that direction.
I don't mean to be accusing you of anything, but...
No, you're right.
And you're an intellectual,
I've been hiding out as a furniture mover.
Okay, right.
Lately, I've been going through my old papers.
Okay.
And what happened was, in 1970, and then again in 1980, I wrote what I thought was among the most important scientific breakthroughs of all time.
Wow, big endeavor.
I thought of who are the big guys? Sigmund Freud, Karl Marx. No, excuse me, no.
Well, he was a great sociologist,
Albert Einstein.
for sure.
But the guy I decided, I was sort of a mixture of Copernicus and Freud.
Okay, those are two biggies, yeah.
And what I've figured out, I did plan on talking about today, because I thought it fits in with the conference you got all excited about. That I have an offering that they did not consider in the conference that I think is would be helpful for them to consider, and I think it's also time to speak out loud about it in terms of President Obama's invitation to make a step up of dramatic proportions in our understanding the brain. Okay. Now, you're familiar with him getting excited about let's figure out the brain better?
Kind of, not as well as I should be.
I think he threw $100 million created a project, and on further reading, if you actually chase down the whole story, the Pentagon figures into this for some reason, that they decided some of their budget. And the irony is, Harold, that what I've been working on is I did create a manuscript of 176 pages.
That's a plan for peaceful but total revolution?
No, actually, it's just my Copernicus Sigmund Freud thing.
Oh, okay.
And here's what I want to just...
and you did that some time back. I mean...
1980, that was before before I became a furniture mover.
Okay, right.
No, as a culmination of all my $1 million worth of education. I mean, to go to Caltech it costs a fortune. And anyhow, what I figured out was that human nature has to be understood in terms of birthdays.
Okay, you've got the birthday.
And as soon as somebody says birthday, then the public says, you mean astrology. And that's the kicker. That's the problem. And my place in history is to get us over that hump to rescue birthday from astrology by arguing that all birthday is the power of timing and the energy of the sun.
Well, okay.
There's plenty of that energy. It is a central feature of our life itself, of our own personal lives. And I got at Caltech enough mathematics through studying electrical engineering in particular that I learned to appreciate something that is very, very basic, but most people don't understand. And that is
sine
cycles have 3 dimensions. And people know 2 of those dimensions, frequency and amplitude, but they don't know the 3rd dimension of sine cycles. There's AM, FM, but what's the 3rd one? And it turns out it's PM.
PM. Okay, spell it out.
So what does we know AM is amplitude modulation, FM is frequency modulation, and PM is phase modulation.
Okay.
And where do they use phase? They mainly use that in teletype. But there is such an item called phase modulation, and they can do tricks by varying the frequency so that at one end they send it out modulated according to some information, and then it's decoded at the other end. But my point is the P. The point is phase.
Okay.
The point is that if we apply all this mathematics to the sun and to birthday, it boils down to a very simple, basic proposition that I offer to the scientific community as well as the MNN audience.
A sine wave?
And here's what it is, that the solar energy variation goes from 200 calories per square centimeter per day in the end of December, like Christmas time, 200 calories per square centimeter per day. That's the energy from the sun that comes here. And it goes up by a factor of 4.
4, okay,
at the high end in June 20, whatever. And then back down. And the shape of that curve can be approximated as a nice, simple sine cycle, 1 a year. So the frequency is 1 a year. The amplitude goes from 200 to 800. But what's that kicker again?
The kicker, the phase wave.
Phase. So what is phase? That's the point.
Know.
Now, the way I like to describe phase, it is the identity of every point.
The identity, I'm trying to understand.
The address of every point.
The address,
In other words, you got this thing, you know the shape. But every point.
Every point along
is special.
Along the wave,
And so the address of every point.
Be like a marker or no?
No, the reality. In other words, every point is different from every other one.
Right, okay,
It has a different place on it.
Yeah, that's right.
But there's an additional element.
Okay, beyond the phase.
And that is that phase is not only the identity of every point, but the treatment, the honoring, the respecting of that particular point as a starting point of a whole cycle.
Oh, I see. If you make that starting point, it could be the starting one. Okay.
So phase is this idea of starting point of a cycle.
Okay. Okay, that I can understand.
And birth date is the phase of this big fat solar science cycle that is the energies of life itself. And so we would expect that in nature, in evolution, in human neurology, in brain science, that phase should play a major role. The problem has been astrology is repugnant to scientists, and so they didn't get into birth date with both feet. But I'm proposing that if you want to understand the human brain better, what you have to do is zoom in on each individual birth date type as a separate form of humanity and begin to respect that it has its own sense of normal, its own special parameters of neurological networking. And that is such a big deal that to understand humanity, they try to understand the whole thing and there's a blur because there are these different forms of humanity. And so if we begin to sort them, then we can make a paradigm upward shift, and the analogy is the periodic table.
I'll be damned. Okay.
That we're talking about the power of sorting. And once you sort humanity, then you can study the individual elements.
Okay.
So each birthday is a different element of humanity in that way.
I remember Mendeleev. I can remember growing up, there were what was it? How many were there? There was 92 elements or something. And I just saw the other day there's now 122 elements. They've just come up with new ones. I don't know how the hell that happened, but I always thought that was a reality.
Well, you know, that reminds me of another point.
Mendeleev,
Well, I want to add this. One of the
that's really
there's a couple of spin-offs from this birthday thing that I can describe up front.
Okay.
One of them is a replacement for our entire legal system.
Oh, that's something I could really
Because you were saying that in addition to Caltech, I did get a doctor's in jurisprudence.
Right, okay.
And in law school, I was already hip to the fact that our legal system was messed up. But my father was willing to pay for my legal education, even though I was a professed anarchist.
Yeah, right.
I was like the resident anarchist in law school.
Somebody's got to do it.
But I will say, having stayed in touch with lawyers, and I'm going to my 50th law school reunion a couple of months ago, it turns out that most lawyers feel that the system is obsolete. It doesn't work.
Well, I think that goes almost across the board. It's not just one thing. It's just
oh, you mean our whole government?
The whole institutional structure we've inherited out of history.
So our legal system
is out of whack.
All right. So the way birthday fits into this game.
Yes, please.
Is one of my discoveries in the 40 years that I've been wandering, asking everybody I can their birthday.
Yeah, it comes up often, I've noticed.
I even put it on my business card. When's your birthday?
I know.
One of the things I learned is that there is a part of the birthday circle where we can find good judges. And the name of that part of the circle in the zodiac is called Aquarius. So you could jump and say the way to the Aquarius age is to appreciate the powers of those people born at that time of the year in general.
That's in January or December or something?
January, February, that range.
Okay.
Where they have a real talent, a knack, a neurological arrangement that is the best for being judges. And they're not all that way, but that's where to look. And once we find what we can do, instead of our current legal system where you got to hire a lawyer to argue and wait your time to go before the judge and all that crap.
Oh, I tell you, it's
Instead
horrible.
of that, we're going to have judges available to come ASAP whenever there's a need for justice, and we'll empower them. We'll have a traveling camera TV crew, and we'll have instant justice where you give the judge the situation, he asks the questions, he looks around, he makes the investigation, and he decrees the justice.
And he's of a group of people that are particularly adept at serving that function to society by the sine wave understanding of the P.
The people born at that time have that talent. And one
That's
of the
a really
kickers,
interesting thing, yeah.
And when I meet Aquarians and I tell them this idea, Harold, you know what they invariably come back with?
What?
I can do that. They feel it.
Yeah, really, okay.
So that's one little old thing, because it is a big puzzle what to do about our legal system. The one we have now, we borrowed from England, and it was a big deal about words on paper and meanings. What I learned about our current legal system, and the reason it was taken from England and all that, the reason it was created in England was that the common law system is that the judge can only make new law when there isn't any old law that treats the case. So in other words, they wouldn't give judges the power to make justice. They had to follow the law. So the idea is to place justice higher than the law, rather than the law over justice.
That
That's
could allow
the kicker.
for some subjective judgment and so forth, too.
Hey, listen to you, Harold. Subjective judgment. That's it. I'm legitimizing subjective by saying Aquarius are entitled to the subjective judgment. What do you think? It's a new kicker.
It's very interesting. I've never heard it said so clearly as you just did now. I'm really happy to hear that, because I know that's really interesting, and some people kind of look at it as scan. What about the obvious fact? I'm a geographer, and the obvious fact that in the southern hemisphere things are the exact opposite in terms of what they are in the northern temperate temperatures, and that kind of thing.
I'm glad you asked that question, Harold, because what I really wanted to talk about was that. Wait, I hear you. There is. It's obviously true that the southern hemisphere has the 6 months out of phase with the northern hemisphere. Fortunately, there is only from here down Venezuela
down there,
in South America, and you got the bottom third of Australia. But we should apply for a grant to do a nice study there and look at it.
Also,
but here's the point I really want to make.
The tropics is always the same. It doesn't
here's the
vary.
point I want to make.
It doesn't vary much in the tropics either, between the Tropic of Cancer
I got
and
a more
Capricorn.
important point to make.
Okay, by all means. But the one point you made is the legal system has to be changed, and the political system has to be changed, and the economic system has to be changed, and the sociological and the educational system. They all big changes in the wind.
Well, I am proposing that as we as a people learn to think together, which we don't know how to do yet, we have to work for bosses, and they have those horrible little committee room meetings. what I am proposing is the benefit of a compass, a solar compass for sorting thought, so that when everybody's raising their hand, call on me, the facilitator can look at her solar compass and say, let's see, there's an August 12th there, and there's a March 12th there, and we can have, actually the real kicker is we can all learn the pet little schools of thought of each of our birthdays so that we can begin to see it coming. That what has been confusing about thinking together is we have our own little favorite places to go in our minds, and it would be the next step up for all of us to learn the trips of everyone else so that we can begin to see how to bring it together.
Would that help towards some sort of sense of empathy and everything among the peoples of the world that is crying out for a need in this world, particularly among those who claim to be a leadership class that seem not to care at all about the lesser advantaged people of the world, much less the ecology, except as it can be seen to benefit them?
I like that idea of your grouping on empathy, Harold. Yes, good for you.
Well, I think the world cries for it.
Yeah, that's what Christianity was supposed to be.
Supposed to be, but it's been totally ignored by the political classes through history.
If we said empathy instead of love, you think we could have gotten better
love
mileage?
is another big important word, but that's another thing that's overlooked. And they like the Medicis really liked Leonardo, not because he could paint beautiful paintings in the Renaissance and all that. He made a siege machine that gave them a political advantage to conquer the other tribe. And that's still what informs the political process. Whoever's got the gun can conquer
you would say that's
and rule and impose their culture.
Actually,
and that still rules in terms of the way the world works.
You know, I think we can go back to the, give people a little relief from my birthday shtick and watch the march.
Oh, that's right. Well, that's what we were talking about, is that there is and we had this Occupy movement that was crushed.
But
by a
you're right.
33-man army that Mr. Bloomberg says he has against the people. And what are they complaining about? Why are they complaining? And there's unlimited reasons to complain.
You know, there were leaks that I saw online in the last week of plans to kill, assassinate, occupy people by the FBI if it was necessary, if they got too powerful.
Are you sure is that well documented and sourced and everything? I mean, there are lots of rumors flying around.
I mean, they play for keeps, I think. And
and
the Occupy was a bit of a challenge to the powers that be.
And it wasn't just in New York or Wall Street. It was everywhere in the world.
And 99 versus 1% is indeed fighting words.
Well, it's also apropos of the reality.
It is
because,
accurate fighting words.
Like I think I mentioned it, I did with the program before with Sarah Flounders. You know her well from Action Center.
She's wonderful.
She's pointed out that the wealth inequality in America now is greater than it was in 1789 France, and you know what happened there.
Oh, just while I think about it, I just want to make this flash.
It's obscene.
Here's the flash.
And they get away with
Give
it.
me the, let me
and
give
they
you,
buy all the
I'm flashing, man. When the guy's flashing, let him rip.
Flash away.
Okay, no, what I wanted to offer was that in my grand scheming for 40 years of how to articulate the alternative.
You've been doing great scheming.
What I wanted to say.
And you're a great human being. I want everyone to know. I'm sorry, this is a real gentleman and a scholar.
What I'm talking about is that you got your trip with Kurzweil and the corporations and all that, but here, let me give you my new one. I got a new one.
You got a new trip, okay. Let's hear it.
And that is that the revolution comes down to just a couple of simple propositions.
Okay.
That we create as a people a sense of new games to play, instead of business as usual, we replace business as usual with what you're talking about.
Business as it ought to be.
Empathy, caring, full human dignity we aim at. How about loving the planet?
Right. Ecological appreciation.
You know, when it comes to love, it's like at least the planet we can love.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so
those are all things that are given short shrift compared to money. Money seems to rule everything.
So the point is, you're right, that instead of the orientation of all our organizations being money for the stockholders in particular,
the few, the 1%.
Instead of that, we just announced the new game to play is for all these institutions, all the corporate boards and all that, excuse me, guys, we think in a new way, yes. What you have to do now is treat the public as if they're the boss. That means like you don't lie to the boss in your advertising. You know, you aim to actually be good. That's the revolution. And we don't have to marching in this. No, that's it.
Truth for a change.
No, but
true love for a change.
Because I was thinking, you know, it would be so messy to tear down all the corporations and build them up.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to be included.
What we could do is have public television at the conferences of the board of directors.
Yeah.
And I think we'll need a few more board of directors representatives of the public.
You know where there ought to be you know where there ought to be cameras also, are in the courts. Do you notice that this thing with Trayvon is going? They're running cameras all the time. The whole damn thing is being to the world. Every court should have cameras in it with nuanced look at the judges and everything in order to be able to help inform the shenanigans that go on. And
you know,
so forth.
I will say,
because there's a lot of injustice dealt out in the courts of justice.
You're right that among the
particularly if you're black and brown or disadvantaged.
You're talking secrecy in a way. You're talking
in secret, yeah.
And to give credit where it's due, there is one individual on the planet that stands out for cameras in the court. Posar.
Posar, he does, yeah. And
he did serve time pushing the issue.
Yeah. But they're doing it now with the Trayvon thing. Yeah. That's because it's got ratings. It's got ratings and everything. I guess.
That was it.
Why do they allow the cameras there when they don't allow it into the person who's being having his pocket picked, as our friend Joe Barton and Paula Gloria say, by courts that are just like what do they call them? What do they call those places down south where they would have the sheriff waiting and catch somebody and then throw them in jail and sue and get speed traps or something they would call them, and they'd say you were speeding, you weren't, and they would just put intimidate them and pick their pockets for money. They're making money. Those court systems.
That's police state at the local level.
It is, yeah, at the police state, and it's up at the level.
But more
the
generally,
injustices are manifest.
I do want to
and systemic.
I do want to make the point. We said police state, but let me make the next phraseology here.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is rule by fear, and the whole issue about terrorism is the police state tactic tool for rule by fear.
Well, that's always been the enemies at the gate
but
notion.
Before, and that all comes down to one of your favorite topics, 9/11. And, you know, lately in the last couple of weeks, I have been pushing 9/11 on strangers more than usual.
9/11 truth.
That my favorite punchline in terms of arguing, like as recently as today, a friend of mine,
I'm shocked.
A retired engineer in a senior center who spends his time mostly watching pornography.
Okay,
but we're trying to change the subject to 9/11 truth. And I couldn't convince him. He did not want to. And you know what the problem is? He watches History Television, or History Channel.
Well, I watch the History Channel too. They're getting good stuff.
But between them and National Geographic, they have a pretty good grip on the public mind, pushing them away from 9/11 truth.
Well, maybe that's a thing like that.
They are government
enterprises. I think that multimedia is really coming in. I don't know why.
But let me get back to 9/11 here. Here's the kicker.
Well, okay.
Here's the punchline on 9/11.
Yeah.
It took 440 days for President Bush to finally agree to consent to a 9/11 investigation. 440 days. The nagging was from the wives of the victims.
Yeah.
And his first choice was that champion of integrity, Henry Kissinger.
Yeah, right. That was a joke.
And then Kissinger said, sorry, boss, I got too many Arab customers
that
in my
I can't handle, yeah.
So the guy they chose
was the head of myth making.
Yeah, he puts on his resume, his special ability is the maintenance of public myth. So 9/11 was a public myth.
Mel Brooks could do wonders with it.
In which anybody who watches 10 minutes on the internet of just watching the way the buildings came down. They have the videos.
7, yeah.
You can see they were exploded.
Yeah,
it isn't crunch, crunch, crunch. It's and you see all kinds of steel being flung in every direction, up and out. And as an engineer, you really have to go to engineering to see that these clouds, like volcanic eruptions, are not crumbling steel.
When they build a building, you put a big building, I don't want to get into this a lot and everything.
I bet you don't.
But building, I would think if they build a building, they know it's going to come down at some point, and they could just have built into the architecture the means by which a building could be, what do you call it? What do they call that when they do the
controlled demolition?
Yeah, controlled demolition. Have it built in. Just have it built into when you build the building. You're going to be able to think of its device that is
the buildings were built with the idea that they were going to come down. That is true. That they were sloppily constructed. And I did know the quality control engineer for the buildings. And I brought him to public access. His name was Frederick Steingart. And he said that they were careless, deliberately, that the concrete they used for the flooring had too much sand and not enough concrete, that there was substandard materials along. And I guess they always had a sense that they were creating sort of biblical towers of Babel that for some historical benefit would come down at some point. I think that was part of the game. Well,
anyway, one of my things too is one of the tyrannies of a talk thing where you go for an hour is the tyranny of time. We haven't got any time.
Let's go do
and
the
what
thing.
I want to do, you got this clip, and this is going to show the parade that happened, or the demo that happened on the 4th of July this year, Independence Day.
And try to imagine what a crowd saying, we want a different government, we want a different economy, what that would look like, and what kind of steps.
Or try to imagine this crowd being multiplied by about 5,000% in terms of a mass uprising by the citizenry that's had enough.
And what would you like him to say?
To think, well, let's just let them run the tape and everything, and he shot it beautifully. So it's about 5-7 minutes, something like that. So let's run that tape. Now, we're talking with Joe Friendly, public access pioneer and figure extraordinaire. So let's run the tape. There's our Reverend Billy.
That the environment that we live in vacuums up our conversations. That invisible people are watching us all the time. Maybe we suspected it, but now we know it. And we know that we must combat it with a new kind of activism. Yes. Go back to the Constitution. Woo, woo. Put those words in your body. All of those amendments. Say it again and again and again. Yes. And you will begin to be able to do those counterintuitive things that we will be called upon to do in the coming days and weeks and months. So please join me. And join me in this march today.
sisters! Brothers and sisters! Your choice to be here! Your choice to be here! Your choice to face the truth! Your choice to face the truth! Means you are free! Means you are free! You are expressing your freedom! You are expressing your freedom! One quick chant! One quick chant! As the performer set up! As the performer set up! We've had ourselves surrounded for years. We have ourselves surrounded for years. Former CIA operatives. Former CIA operatives. Have embraced the open source imperative. Have embraced the open source imperative. With truth, trust, and transparency. With truth, trust, and transparency. There is no need to hide anything. There is no need to hide anything. All matters will be resolved with heart and truth. All matters will be resolved with heart and truth. Big brothers watching, little sisters listening. Big brothers watching, little sisters listening. Big brothers watching, little sisters listening. Big little sisters listening. I'm going to read. And we're all going to say. The words of the Fourth Amendment. The right of the people. The right of the people. To be secure. To be secure. In their persons. Houses. Papers. And effects. Against unreasonable searches and seizures. Shall not be violated. No warrant shall issue. But upon probable cause. Supported by oath or affirmation. And particularly describing. The place to be searched. And the persons or things to be seized. That is right out of the Constitution.
That's really good. They didn't have the rebellion. That was beautifully done, really good done. Yeah, it was a great video. Yeah, yeah. And it's a rallying cry. This
I will
is.
say on behalf of the audio department that mic check really works. When you could see his voice was kind of small, but when the people all go together,
It came well.
that's
yeah.
a good invention.
Yeah.
The mic check idea.
Yeah, it works well. It was occupied. Too bad it got broken up by a 33,000-man army by Mr. Bloomberg across the country. But the spirit and the dissent is still there. And one that we ought to realize that there's a great deal of recognition at a
Well, to
general
pick up
level
on that,
of everything.
The big complaint about Occupy was that they didn't offer the public the next step as far as what the 99% do to take power away from the 1%.
Well, okay.
And what we're talking about today is that, Harold. We're talking about offering the public the choice. Would we, could we, how might we announce?
Why should we now after we never have out of all of history?
But our political process of the Democrats and Republicans doesn't work.
Apparently not,
And third parties are excluded.
Yes.
The Green Party has a wonderful program. Jill Stein, she's on YouTube. She'll be on show again, I think, Friday on my show.
Is she running
People love her.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, she's teaches medicine at Harvard Medical School.
Yeah, right.
But when you hear her politics, that's a language that we don't hear among our politicians.
But we have reified out of history like sclerosis or something, all these institutions that have been formulated within one context, which I think suffering humanity has gotten used to the idea there's always some big shot with a big gun that's conquered, and they have every right to have everything, whether it was the emperors of Rome
let's make one
or
point.
the kings up on a hill.
Yeah,
And the poor people had to get used to the idea, even onto chattel slavery, for crying out loud. What kind of a mindset had to be imbued in the people that they had best cotton down and then recognize the legitimacy, political legitimacy of the crowned heads. So mankind has never had a real, honest to God, what the future now perhaps is making available to us. And the power has always been by the person. It's called realpolitik, and it still holds.
Okay, my turn. My turn. I got it. Yeah,
so, but that's history,
yeah,
and what we need is something new on a comprehensive scale. For some reason, and why is something new that makes something new possible?
Okay, so to me, Jefferson jumps up.
Thomas Jefferson?
That indeed he had read a lot, and he was hopeful that the human mind could do better than what you're complaining about. And he managed to create some wording like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that still sort of follows around. Our court says, hey, it's not in the Bill of Rights, so you got some rights
With
to
all
life.
due respect, it was not something on the order that we're talking about, or we ought to be talking about. It was just another group of white men who had a certain power structure that they wanted to take over from a system of royal servitude and so forth by a group of people. They had slavery, they had indentured slavery, they had injustice and a few people, and that system is not the end of the world. Okay, that is a system that people want to repair to. It's a good strategy to repair to all those fine words of Mr. Jefferson and everything, but that was just another continuum of history of a few people ruling that is now ensconced and is incorporated in all of our institutions, and it's not good enough in terms of dealing with the current.
I'm waiting
just
for a
another
time to
phase
jump
of
in.
history.
Okay, as far
Whereas
as Jefferson,
we got to start thinking
as
about
far as
evolutionary
Jefferson
change.
goes, yes, you can pick on the slavery issue with Jefferson, but if you read his autobiography, if you read Jefferson's autobiography, he didn't write too many of those, you know. One,
he wrote a good
he was a man who believed in thinking. That was the big
there was
progress.
An enlightenment, yeah.
And the thinking that was going on in England was stuck with their economic system and their, what you're talking, the status system. And the idea of America in conception, we're still there, is that we have the ability, we could conceivably think our way as a people out of the mess. Well, so I just want to make one major point historically. Harold, on your show, this one point.
A point already.
All right, the point is that we've already said our government is dysfunctional, corrupt, a criminal enterprise, the justice system doesn't work, the economic system is not achieving the abundance that reason would offer us as an alternative. The election system doesn't work. We need an alternative that provides freedom and people reasoning together, and instead of the ways of the business world, people actually being honest with each other, the ways of integrity, the ways of clear conscience to replace.
And justice for all, really, and not just words.
Real justice for all, with judges who respond to complaints and are able to come up with solutions and are empowered to realize their solutions. I just wanted to make one more point.
Well, all right, but I just submit that that's not been available to humanity writ large within an ecological context until our lifetime. 1776 was not the end. 76 was the beginning of what has to end. That's not the thing. It's a good strategy.
So we're supposed to think our way out of the mess we got now.
That's
right. 1776 said we have the right to think our way out. It didn't say, okay, so I was just going to say one more point, remember?
Okay, go ahead, make the point.
Although it's an obvious point, I was just being sneaky here. I just wanted to be said on this station, we'll blame it on you, me, whatever.
Blame it on me.
Okay, that the condition of the world is that the United States is an evil empire.
Well, I don't like to use words like that.
And I just was reading Peter Weiss has submitted a opinion editorial to 1,600 different newspapers. But the point he makes is that when it comes to nuclear weapons, frankly, in terms of the way the mind works, there is no rationale, there is no justification for using nuclear weapons on anybody ever. It's a bad idea, that there are better ways to solve problems than to just destroy and to make a mess and all that kind of stuff. So nuclear weapons are a bad idea. But the point he makes, to prove that the U.S. is an evil empire, that's my point, is that there were meetings in Brazil in February, and it goes down the different months. There was meetings in this country the next month, meetings in this country, all about how can we finally say no more nuclear weapons. And the U.S. refused to even show up at all those meetings.
Well, why?
So it's the American people we have to appeal to say that the U.S. government is so lacking in morality in its military choices. What we do now, we're sending over drones to Yemen. What right do we have to pick on Yemen?
Pakistan, yeah.
Now, what I will say this, and let's make the big point. Here is the big point. The terrorists are complaining about what we're talking about is to be complained about.
Yeah.
That if we go ahead and kill somebody in Yemen, then Yemen says, well, then there's a logic to killing us back.
Right.
So the U.S. is deliberately creating terrorism so that we can then say, oh, give more money to the Pentagon, we got to fight terrorism, buy more drones and all that. But it's a bad, sick, rotten game that the U.S.
always has been. But the trouble is,
the U.S. is the monster unto the world right now. And in particular,
I think it's a little bit
the fact that
overdrawn.
Obama will not even face climate change directly, that we only got a window of about 4 years to make dramatic, huge changes in everything the way we do it. And we didn't even begin to do that. So we are marching off a cliff when it comes to climate change.
But
I mean, we can say goodbye to Arizona and Utah. If the ice melts in Greenland, we're talking about
Antarctica. Yeah,
we're talking about Manhattan being underwater.
Yeah, I know.
So that is the catastrophic situation. You and I are kids. It's hey, words and this and that, and the public. But we need demonstrations. I mean, demonstrations are not the issue. We need to use the powers of the electronic media.
Public access,
to arrive at a consensus. Once we have a feeling of consensus, as the public is wised up, then we got it.
Well, that would be really good. Except I don't see it evil. It's just a continuation of a long sojourn. We've been here 200,000 years, at least since civilization.
I would say this, to say the cure is that the U.S. should stop all of its military stuff.
Well, that's going to be something, but that's
Isn't that true?
Well, what I'm trying to say is I don't want a particularly singular, it's just a natural extension. I mean, the Gatling gun had an advantage over the Miska, so they could conquer India. We had an advantage over the American Indians, so we could conquer them and steal their grain and have real. It's all the power, the intimidating power, overriding power, now into space and now being able to investigate everybody is the mark of the leaders who are up in the hill running everything the way they always have. The United States is just a continuation of the nightmare that James Joyce called history.
So you're saying there's always a bad guy.
Something has changed.
There's always a bad guy and we're the bad guy?
No, I don't want to say bad guy, good guy. We're all caught up in the same boat. You've got a situation now where existentially it's new. The weapons have now, with the tridents particularly, and the thermonuclear and others, the weapons now are species lethal.
Right.
The entire, that was not the case in 1945. We were impotent. We were gestating. We've come to a point in the modern experience, the weapons are able to eliminate the Homo sapiens species, which never has occurred or been characteristic of the zeitgeist until about 1970, our time. On the other side, the technological capability of liberating all of humanity in a fair and equitable way within an ecological context that this conference was held is trying to get to, has also not been characteristic of our capability. It's now capable. We have a capability.
We have the capability
of
to
having
solve the problem.
of having a liberated humanity as opposed to annihilating and stopping consciousness. That makes this time new. And so what we have to do is be able to all understand that, liberate the people.
We know that already.
No, we don't. We're still bad guy, good guy. The bad guys are going to have to be included. We're going to have to subsume the outdated institutions on their own terms.
You don't like bad guy. Okay, so we have to replace our government. You agree on that, right?
Our whole system of thinking.
Our government and our institutions.
That we have transcended material scarcity for the first time at along about the same time.
So we should aim for our new design of society for abundance.
No, we should aim at understanding the new reality that makes possible things that have never been available to mankind until our generation.
So here we are.
Thinking toward an operating manual for Spaceship Earth that can liberate rather than annihilate the Homo sapien species and the evolution of consciousness. Thanks a lot for the program. Thanks, Joe. And public access is a way that can be done without being blocked.